Oh, I'm so happy to finally have you here with my audience, which many of my audience is already following me, but it is such an honor to have you in all of your splendor, your passion, your intelligence, your vision, your perspective to go deeper into topics. And I absolutely love that. First time I saw your posts, I was like, that's my girl right there. You speak to so many of
Oh,
us. Thank you so much. It's just a pleasure to have you here.
well, thank you so much for having me. We share a lot of the same perspectives that actually I really feel need to be shared right now, right? Um,
Yeah.
and so that's why we're doing this live. So I know
Yeah.
we've been talking about
Yes.
it for a while now, and now we get to dive into the goodness.
We do. We get to dive into the good, especially what you said. It's so true, especially now. I mean, the perspective of joining. The reason that I love your content so much is because you have such the ability to join the science with the spirit, just seamlessly. And it's when you have the ability to do that, there's a discovery that happens that goes beyond just the norm, so to speak. And I feel that we need that so much because when we get to ask questions and go, how does that connect? When you talk about the heart resonance, and then you have those beautiful videos that are so stunning, but they're so informative. It pulls you in with the music. You hear, the sound frequency, and we'll talk all about that. And the visual, it opens your eye and it just clicks. And then you have the information, the science. And that's so valuable because people can step into knowing themselves in such an easy way, but it's so good. And I don't know, I'm sure you know Greg Braden in
Mhm.
all you remind me of the
Yeah.
female Greg Braden because he has that, of that, and just because he is well for years was gapping that making that gap between spirituality and science, really heavy on the science and knowing, but then he mixed it in such he was able to use that, the feminine aspect of himself so well.
Mhm.
And you have that very masculine research mind, and then you have that beautiful feminine part that you weave into the knowledge. So that is what we need today right now, for all of us to understand how to walk into that kind of beingness and that kind of wholeness. So I wanted to ask you, how did you first step into this? Tell us a little bit more about you. How did you step into, oh, I'm going to deliver this information in this way?
Well, it was part of sort of my healing journey to sort of acquire this information, searching for better health. I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis and Hashimoto thyroiditis, a couple different autoimmune conditions, as well as Lyme disease. I was in my second year of naturopathic medical school, and so I was looking for information, and it the information. I tell people it feels like I've been talking in a padded room for a while to myself.
Oh,
No,
well.
nobody was really listening. Nobody was, really excited or ready for the information. And then the last couple of years, it hasn't been a matter of effort or force, right? It's just this snowball effect. People really are wanting this information. And I think it comes down to wanting a different perspective. I think we all went through a journey together through the pandemic, and it opened our eyes to a lot of different things about the way the world works. And I think that really got people interested in a new perspective, and that's what I talk about. And I try to pull out all the stops. I'm like, let's get a good video, let's get a nice beat in there to pull you in, because I do believe that this information can shift the needle in our trajectory. And we are such in desperate desperate need of a paradigm shift. What we're doing right now as in medicine and healthcare, of course, that's where my interest lies. But as a society, as a global society, what we're doing, how we are relating to each other isn't working. And so I think that the perspective that quantum biology brings in, it's interesting. We talk in a negative way about reductionistic science, and I do the same thing, right? Like specialists that have, they specialize in this organ, these diseases, without a lot of crosstalk. But the interesting thing about quantum biology is when you reduce it down even further. So you're looking at the smallest pieces of life, electrons and photons and phonons from sound and excitons and, these really small pieces. And what you see is that those lines, those boxes that we are put in, that we practice medicine from, really don't exist. Those lines start to blur. And we kind of start to recognize we don't end at the barriers of our skin. That being human means to stand in that flow of energy. And that flow of energy is what is connecting all of us. And it really doesn't separate us from the other. And, when I was in college, my undergrad degree was in philosophy. And I studied a lot of philosophy, Martin Buber talking about how to relate to the other. And I loved it. I mean, it's absolutely was useless for me to go get a job, but it was such a beautiful study in how we can relate to each other. And I think bringing that into medicine, bringing that into our families, our communities, our doctors' offices, I think we're all being called to relate to each other in a different way, relate to the world in a different way, relate to our bodies and our health in a different way.
I love, yes, absolutely. I love what you said about the philosophy and the Martin Buber and I believe, I mean, exactly what you're saying is that our human ascension is exactly us dropping the illusion and the lie of separation. It's just right there. And as I think it speaks to when you said it, you were in a padded wall, a padded room, and people weren't really hearing you. And now suddenly people are hearing. They want that information. Yes, the pandemic, all of that, did I say that? Changed a lot of our thinking on how we are relating to the world and the actual information that we're getting, that we're receiving, and we're questioning it. And I think that, I don't know if I feel like we might be frozen a little bit. Hopefully, okay. We're not, I think we're off freeze. You froze for a second and you're back. What I was saying is you being in that padded room and not being heard. Now people really are wanting that information because what happened in these past 3 years or so really have people thinking like, wait a minute, things are different. The information, our truths are different. And that is leading us to remembering the biggest disillusionment, of all time, which is there is no separation. And so that trickles down, just like you were saying, into medicine, into our families, into all of our relationships, into financial, even finances. Every single thing is woven together, whether you think it or
Right.
not. Um,
Right.
as a practitioner for many years, was doing the cord cutting, or cord cutting, energy cord cutting. And, this is
Yeah.
what we're taught. I'm cutting cords, I'm cutting cords.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized it was probably, I got the message about the last 4 years that that's ridiculous. There is no cord cutting. You cannot cut yourself off from any energy because if we are connected in the grandmother's web and the quantum field, we're all connected. So cord cutting would allude to the fact that you're cutting yourself off from yourself. So it's like, wait a minute. So the only way that we can overcome all of the things that we're trying to separate ourselves from is by changing our frequency and our vibration. Because when we change our vibration, then that changes how we vibrate into the quantum field. And that's how we can cut cords, so to speak, but you just can't do that. So that that wholeness, the connectedness that you're speaking about that runs through everything. You can't just go, this is one organ, this is one organ, there's a doctor for this and a doctor for that. It's like, to me, that's our ascension as humanity, remembering that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I talk a lot about coherence.
Mm,
I was doing a podcast
yeah.
interview yesterday, and they said, "What does freedom mean to you?" Um, and I said, I really come back to this idea of coherence and the idea that a wave of water, of ocean water, in the ocean. It's this massive, powerful, coordinated, beautiful action where there are individual molecules of water in there and they're all working as a collective. And so if you had asked me, 25 years ago, what freedom was, it was like,
Right.
my way and like,
Right.
like this
Right. Exactly.
anarchy and but but right now, if you ask me what freedom is, it's the ability to maintain that individuality, the ability to make my own choices and have the freedom to pursue my own goals and have my own beliefs and have that be okay, have that be safe, but to also belong to a collective. And
Yes.
that my
Yes.
freedom is dependent on that collective. My freedom and safety depends on that ideal of freedom being held by everybody else, like a wave in the ocean, right? So that this idea of coherence, where we're vibrating at the same resonance, or like two tuning
Yeah.
forks singing at the same tune, we can't go very far if we don't have that coherence.
Yeah.
And, I've been talking a lot about what's happening in Gaza and what's happening just globally from that, and talking about the ability to have these big emotions, to have fear, to have anger, to have sorrow, such deep sorrow, but to also have this resilience of coherence where we can do what we need to do. We can take the action that we need to take, but it comes from a place of coherence, from a place of grace, not a my way now kind of feeling, right? It's this
Yeah.
idea that if we're going to get somewhere, we're going to do it through coherence. We're going to do it through alignment and embodying that. And it doesn't mean looking away. It doesn't mean all love and light and just do your own thing. It means actually just that, like actually being able to have a coherent conversation like we're having right now, even if we don't agree, right? Even if we are diametrically opposed with big emotions, we can still come from a place of coherence where we are matching and trying to match, right? Like I've noticed, the online space is a interesting one, and I get a lot of eyes on what I do sometimes, and that comes with people that are very upset about what I post and very upset. From my perspective, it's sort of interesting out of all the things to be upset about, but it happens, and it's been happening quite frequently in the last couple of months, and it's just sort of that collective energy of like this aggressive, argumentative,
Right.
I
Sure.
oppose. And
Sure.
if I talk to those people and keep my coherence, even though we are not on the same page, we're not energetically on the same page,
Right.
right? But if I can maintain that coherence within myself, not all the time, but there's a percentage of people that will come and match my energy, and we can have a dialogue. And sometimes we stay completely in opposite camps, completely disagreeing, but the whole tone of the conversation changes because we're able to just have a coherent conversation. And I think, like we're having now, we can listen
Sure.
to each other and
Mhm.
and match that energy. And I think that's what really, I think a lot of us are being called to do right now.
Yeah, you're so spot on as usual. You're always spot on. Um, we are so being called to that. I think this is the big teaching for humanity right now is how can we disagree, but know that there's a shadow side, know that we have opposite, that there's that other part of us. And I think there's so much trauma that people don't trust that they're going to be heard, that that's probably one of the first impulses is to fight and to go, no, it's my way or that, all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
when we do exactly what you said is have the ability to maintain a frequency, stay coherent, get into that grounded state and actually listen without reacting, but seeing what's going on and then
Mhm.
re- responding, you see that people start to actually take off that, that trauma wound a bit and go, hey, you know what? I didn't really think about what that before. I never really knew that. And if you actually show pieces of history to go, hey, just letting you know, there's some things that I don't know that you don't know. Let's explore together, which is why I love your content, how I was saying before. It's like when you have the courage to explore, and that's the thing, it's the courage to go beyond when I call it the curiosity is so good. When you stay curious, you can stay out of fear
Yeah.
because all that other stuff is just fear. And if I have never ever seen a time in history where Prime Creator is shoving down the throat of humanity the lesson of coherency. We have not. I mean, it is raw, it is bold, it is painful, it is like unseen. We are in uncharted territories, but we
Mhm.
need it apparently because we wouldn't be here, right? If we had that worked out. So it's here we are,
Yeah.
and here we are. The courage part I brought up. Love, frequency, and courage I wanted to talk about today. I think the courage is the big part because it's the courage to go further than you thought you could go, even when you see something that's uncomfortable, even if it's out there and, out there, nothing's really out there, right? Everything's inside. But when you have the courage to walk a path of truth, and it goes beyond your ego as to what you were taught, what you know, your parents, your friends, what you read, what you were taught, what you were, in school for.
Mhm.
You have the courage to go beyond that. Suddenly, everything opens,
Yeah.
and this is where humanity literally comes into the ability to witness itself. Because I think that's like we can't witness ourselves
Yeah.
if we don't have the courage to drop the ego and say, "Why the fuck is this happening? Like all of the stuff, why is it happening?" And
Yeah.
then you start to realize it's like I saw Hillary get online. Hillary Foster, she's a dear sister, a friend of mine, and we had done some incredible. She is a wonderful medicine woman working in the Rose Temple with Janine, and um, I had some incredible journeys with them, into the deep, and saw the new geometry being formed, like literally seeing beyond and having the courage. And when you go there, you begin to, you see that every single thing that
Mhm.
has ever happened on planet is because of you. You're like, wait a minute, did I do that? You're like,
Yeah.
oh, whoa. I mean, I do past life regression. I'm a shamanic practitioner. I'm going into all those areas. And the crazy part is what's happening in whatever country. It's either in your backyard, in your bathroom, or in your house and wherever. You are
Mhm.
responsible. We are responsible for every single piece of what has happened. There are it's fascinating because we're all woven together. It's like there's something that wasn't taken care of 3 lifetimes ago, or your ancestral path that wasn't healed.
Mm.
You're holding that right now. And you get to see, like, oh, wow, you uncover and the layers come out and the layers, and you just begin to see, oh, wow. And then that tags right into the heart, opens the heart, opens you to compassion. And then the curiosity wraps around because you're like, oh God, I stayed curious enough to see what was happening. You see it in your heart. You have compassion for every single thing that's happening in every person.
Mhm.
And then you start to have your awakening. It's just, it's a wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a wow.
yeah, absolutely. And courage is such an interesting word. Before getting into medicine, I was going to college for philosophy, and I was competing. I was really competitive in Taekwondo, a martial art. I was, doing national, international competitions, Olympic trials. Didn't go to the Olympics, but, I was very competitive. And courage at the time to me meant, this push, be brave, but now, if you were to ask me what courage meant, I think it's much more gentle. It's just much more, just a simple definition for me is just being okay with being wrong. Like,
Yeah,
I don't have
yeah,
to force and fight and push the boulder up the mountain if it's okay for me to be wrong, if I'm okay with me being human, if I'm okay with having a shadow side and making mistakes. We're all just here dancing in humanity together, right? So if I can be okay with that and accept it, then I don't have to have this, courage and fight, and courage can be that, right? Absolutely. Standing strong in your belief and being courageous and brave, but it feels much different when you accept
yes,
yourself as a whole person, right? It's not
right.
this
Hmm.
force. It's not this, exhausting effort. It's just part of what we
Right.
do as humans.
Well, that balance, I mean, that the courage, the word for that, it's exactly, it's not to have that where you have to push the boulder, but it's the courage to be okay to be weak or to be wrong or to show that other side. That's, I mean, listen, hold up. Let's rewind that. Like, did you say you were uh almost an Olympic martial artist? Could we, is this what lies underneath that incredible feminine sexy strength of Dr. Catherine Clinton? Could you elaborate on that? I love that. Because right, doesn't martial arts teach us exactly that you have the ability, the agility to do all the things and to see what's come, all of that, and yet not have to use it, but you have it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
elaborate on that ninja part of you. I want to hear all of that. I like
Well,
it.
my older sister was doing Taekwondo, and I just fell in love. I really wanted to do that. And so I started when I was really young, maybe like 8 or 9.
Okay.
And then I started going to competitions, and I lost for so long. I mean, it was probably 4 or 5 years before I ever won anything. But it was just fun. It was just fun to um, be in that arena. It was just fun.
Yeah.
And so Taekwondo is really, we do a lot of kicks. We do a lot of things with our legs, right? And so
Yeah.
it's a full contact sport. And um, I just fell in love with the almost dance you do with someone, right? So you agree to fight full contact. Of course, we have pads and mouth gear, and a head helmet, headgear, protection. But you just agree to exchange energy in really sort of an extreme way, right? And
Right.
and so we're kicking each other, we're kicking each other's heads, we're,
Right.
like there are people getting knocked
You
out.
heard it here first. She's kicking people's heads. You heard it. You've never talked about this before. I like this. Okay, continue.
and
She's kicking your asses.
and it was very different. That wasn't something that I was doing at school, or you know what I mean.
Right,
I
sure.
was who I am right now. Um, and if someone wants to explore ideas that are very different, and it's going to be a heated debate, I'm open to that. If, yeah, like at the time, if we want to do a full contact match, I'm open to that. It was a
Right.
really fun exchange of energy, and it was a competition really within myself, right? So we would
Sure.
train, we would be breaking boards, breaking bricks with our hands. And that was really the first kind of introduction into that mind, body, spirit,
Hmm.
0 point field, whatever you
Right.
call it, that merge, that flow. Because I have little like wrists. I am not, I'm not
Right.
a um, brute type of energy. I don't have a lot of brute strength, but I can break 4 concrete bricks because, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I slammed up against
See,
those bricks,
see what I
right?
told you? She's been hiding. She's been hiding stuff, information. She's breaking concrete bricks for. Okay. But
Well,
you,
and
you
it's just
know, you
that
know,
matter of energy, right?
it's
You can flow through
right.
concrete bricks if you
Right.
want, and if you aren't aligned, you'll
Hmm.
hit those concrete bricks
Yes.
like a wall. It's
But
really
what an incredible training is that? I know. I mean, my boys were in Taekwondo for years, and seeing that, understanding how that energy. If your mind is not focused, you're always going to come up against that wall. That
yeah.
is just plain. But the idea that you can walk through walls and punch through walls and do that, it's like that kind of training is absolutely invaluable. And the actually too the contact, the actual contact on the physical body, there's so much to say scientifically on how that actually improves the mind and has you computing things differently inside your body on a cellular level. That's incredible training. And hearing you, um, knowing you on a deeper level, which is so awesome, telling us about that also gives me a lot of insight as to why we, all of us as a whole, love what you're doing so much, because you have that perspective of how to bring that vibration, that frequency in, and you've used it all your life. So that makes a lot of sense. I like
Yeah.
it.
And I've also been, aligned with that flow, and also felt that real state of being human, and that shadow side where you're not aligned and you're just hitting that wall. So, I mean, it's really such a beautiful dance we do with energy as humans, and um, that just that really prepared me for. I was teaching who became my midwife's kids in Taekwondo, and I
Oh, wow.
started assisting with her, and she was a traditional midwife from Mexico, and just had this rich tradition. It came from a lineage of midwives, traditional midwives from Mexico and in the mountains of Mexico. And she's now a quantum healer, but she was doing that at the time. And I always knew it, when she came into the dojang, it was like, is this woman,
Hmm.
and who
Yeah.
are these kids? Just this
Yes.
really beautiful energy. And so that's what got me interested in health. Was I studied with her for years and years, and I knew right away that I didn't want to be a midwife. I was like, I mean, they're cut from another cloth. They're just at the
Absolutely.
beck and call of these babies, right? And these
Yes.
babies aren't 9 to 5.
No,
They
you're
come at
ushering
all
life
hours.
in. You are literally the usher of life coming in. It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. It was like church. It was my
Yeah.
church. And I knew I didn't want to be a midwife, but I wanted to continue to go to church until I could find what suited me. And And so it was 2000, and I didn't make it to the Olympic trials. And I was living in Portland, right up the street from the naturopathic medical school there. And it just sort of, several things sort of collide as they do in life. And I, because of my philosophy and my avoidance of any science or math in college, I had to go back and do all my pre-medical. I started at Math 95 and worked my way, took a 2 or 3 years actually to get back, and be able to start studying naturopathic medicine. But it's, we look at life, and at the time we can't understand. I was really sad that I didn't go to the Olympics, but it was just the most beautiful preparation for what I'm talking about now and what I'm doing now and what I've done with my patients and my practice. So life is just
Mm.
so beautifully mysterious, isn't it?
Yes. Well, you carry the medicine woman, I say that you are. It's interesting as you're talking about that. I'm recalling about the original story on Dr. Usui with Reiki, but in the Japanese, there is a Jikiden Reiki. It comes still originally from Japan and taught by all of these incredible and Shinto um, monks. Um, and I found out that the samurai warriors, they use Reiki to heal themselves on the field. So that's, you know, it's bringing that whole thing. I mean, these warriors, incredible. And the fact that they knew that they had that healing in, the healing ran through their body and in through their hands, and that's what they did. So you're following naturally in the path of all of that.
Yeah.
I wanted a couple of your posts, all of your posts I love, but I was looking at, what do I want to ask her about? What do I want to talk to her about? There's some great posts. I love your posts on water and your study on water, something I'm fascinated with. I had the honor of 2004 when Dr. Emoto came out with his Miracles of Water book and was in Los Angeles. I actually went to see him, and that was amazing. And it opened my mind to what has been known, right, by the ancients, that memory is carried in water, the healing, you can pray into the water, all of the stuff, the water is running through our body and in the earth, again, as we talk about the coherence and being connected. But I love the what you're talking about with water, and I would love to have you elaborate more also on the um, there is a, I forget what the word is, but you're using it in like in spinning water, when you spin water, or
Mm.
there's a structure. Thank you.
Yes.
Structure in water. Yeah, and just how important that is, because I think a lot of people don't really know about structured water still and how important that is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite things to talk about because it's been so underappreciated. I mean, it still is, right? So the more people we can get talking about it, help push that needle in the right direction. So there are many incredible scientists that have been talking about water for decades. I mean, Nobel laureates, right? Like
Sure.
Albert St. Georgi and Luc Montagnier and Gilbert Ling, Emilio Del Guiche, all these amazing researchers and scientists, well
Right.
respected. And they were theorizing about this different state of water. And it was, some people called it an excited state of water versus a ground state, or coherent domains versus incoherent domains. But there seemed to be two things happening here, that there's an energetic quality of the bulk liquid water that we're drinking, where we can have clusters, and the clusters are beautiful. They're these geometric shapes that hold energy. And Montagnier and Benveniste looked at the capacity, and Emoto looked at the capacity of water to store memory,
Right.
right? To have
Right.
memory. And it wasn't until the early 2000s with Gerald Pollack and his team out of the University of Washington when they actually identified this, he termed it in his book, The Fourth Phase of Water, where water against hydrophilic surfaces. And he was looking at Naphthalene, and Naphthalene is a synthetic hydrophilic surface. But he soon turned to natural hydrophilic surfaces. And hydrophilic just means water loving, right? So the water is not repelled. It can easily bind and come up against the surface. And what he found was
If you could go back one more and just say that again, because it's such a gem. I think people are going, wait a minute, what's that? Say that one more time about the Naturophilic. I'm not getting the word.
Yeah, hydrophilic. So
Hydrophilic.
water, yeah, like water loving surfaces. So some surfaces will repel water, right? And
Right.
and just as an interaction between those two surfaces, water and a hydrophilic or a hydrophobic, right? The hydrophobic will push away water versus hydrophilic. It really allows the water to come up and line the surface. And Pollock
Okay.
was looking at Naphthalene, and Naphthalene is a synthetic material. But what he and that's synthetic, right? Man-made. But he soon turned his research to hydrophilic surfaces that we find in biology, plants, collagen in our own tissues. And we know that so much of our biology is hydrophilic, it's water-loving. Our cell membranes, our mitochondria, so many of the insides of our cells, the outside of our cells, our vessels, our blood vessels, our lymphatic vessels, cranial sacral vessels, our fascia, our DNA, they're all lined with this different structure of water. And what he found, and many have replicated, right, is that as this sheet of structured water, it's more viscous, it has a different texture, the hydrogens seem to be more tightly bound. He proposes this hexagonal sheet, which I really love because of the benzene ring. I'm sort of a nerd and in love with the benzene ring. It's just a part of our hormones and our, melanin, so much of the things that we eat in nature, our neurotransmitters have this benzene, this hexagonal ring. And so as one
Benzene
sheet,
ring. Okay.
yeah, yeah. That's just a little tangent and
No, this is
oh,
great. No, we love it. We're in school. We're taking notes. Benzene ring. Love it. Okay. Continue.
and this one sheet of this structured water forms against a cell membrane or fascia with the introduction of infrared energy. And the sun is the biggest source of infrared energy on our planet, but we also produce infrared energy in our body when we move, when we create energy in our mitochondria, create ATP, that source of energy. We're also creating infrared energy. And so, as that infrared energy is introduced, that structured water starts to build. It gets really thick. That zone becomes really thick and it kicks out a positively charged hydrogen. And so they're calling that in the research a proton wire or a proton rich zone. And the separation of charge between that negatively charged structured water and that proton wire, which starts to form, is like a 9-volt battery, right? That separation of charge, Pollock and his team found it was enough to light an LED light bulb. It's certainly enough to power biological action. And like I said, he researched this in biological materials, not just Naphthalene and synthetic materials. So he saw, our fascia. We're sort of used to that image of a double helix with our DNA. Our fascia creates a triple helix, and it forms what people call tropocollagen nanotubules, right? These tubes of collagen.
This is
And
good.
yeah,
This is good. Love it. Okay.
and
Continue. Sorry, my excitement. Continue.
no, it's
Sorry.
exciting. It's so exciting
Exciting.
to sort of view our biology from a different way, you know? And I'll just say right now, these tubules have been theorized to be the anatomical location of meridians, right? And so
Mm,
Mei Wan Ho, a lot of researchers from China and Korea have been looking at this. And what uh, Pollock found was that a tubule of collagen, if you introduce infrared energy, will build that structured water not only on the outside, but on the inside of the tubule as well. And if the infrared energy remains, what he saw was something absolutely mind-blowing. He saw that not only is that structured water forming on the outside of the tubule, but it forms on the inside of the tubule. And that proton-rich zone that we talked about creates a flow of water, a flow of quantum particles, of protons through that collagen tubule. And as long as there's energy, the flow remains just indefinitely. There was no end to it as long as there was infrared energy present. And as long as we're alive, we're creating infrared energy. So it just becomes this mind-blowing
mhm,
view of
mhm.
this quantum network running throughout our body because our fascia connects to every structure
Right.
in our body. Every
Somebody
cell in that
asked
cytoskeleton, yeah.
really quickly, yeah, I'm looking at these questions, and somebody asked, what is fascia?
Mhm.
And I would love for you to explain that. And somebody asked as well, what I wrote it down, it was a while ago. What do you think about ionized water? Just in there, but the fascia.
Yeah, the fascia. The fascia is, you know, so when I was in naturopathic medical school, it was sort of that white covering over the structures of our body that we would remove in cadaver lab, right? It was the useless covering that's there. And people called it sort of the scaffolding, you know, creating the structure of our organs and different vessels throughout our body. But now we understand that fascia not only does that, which is important, right?
Yeah.
We are here on Earth and we need a certain structure, right? So fascia
Yeah.
certainly does that. But fascia connects to every single structure in the body, creating this communication highway network. And it not only provides structure, it communicates with light. Um, Albert Fritz Popp was sort of one of the main researchers looking at biophotons, our own they're termed ultra weak because they're very weak emission of light. Our cells are emitting light in the body, and our cells have opsons and different chromophores, which means proteins that can capture light and emit light and transmit light from place to place. And so uh, what he found was that the light is not random, that it seems coherent, like it is a messaging system. And so our fascia is communicating with light via biophotons. It's communicating with sound. Our fascia glides and shears, creating sounds. And in regular old mainstream medicine, we measure that with a myography, right? This is something that we use to fine tune prosthetics or diagnose muscular disorders. And so this isn't just this crazy lady talking on Instagram.
Right.
This is this is well accepted stuff, and our fascia is also communicating with electricity. So a lot of structures in our body are liquid crystalline in nature, meaning that they are in a mesophase between a solid and a liquid. And the crystalline part comes into it because the molecules in that, you know, a crystal, organ system that we're talking about, our fascia, our DNA, they are aligned in an ordered fashion, right? They're not all helter-skelter. They are aligned in the same way, just like in a quartz crystal. And if we were to compress a quartz crystal, we would create an electrical charge, this piezoelectric charge. Our
Right.
fascia does the same thing. When we deform it, either by moving our body or somebody else massaging myofascial release, acupuncture, acupressure on the meridian system, that deformation of our fascia creates an electrical charge. And our fascia is communicating that way as well. So our fascia is amazing. And, you know, we started this off talking about coherence and this idea that our brain and our heart are in coherence. And when that happens, when they are in coherence, like the Heart Math Institute always talks about, and it's just an amazing research with, when our heart and brain are in coherence, meaning like two tuning forks that are on the same wavelength, they're working together in tandem, it, our biology looks much different. We have high vagal tone, our heart rate variability is high, we're innervating our frontal lobe where we can make calm, rational decisions, and this coherence ripples out to the organ systems within the body, digestion, immune system, inflammatory system, right? And what I found just a few weeks ago was this amazing study where they
Mm.
took, I want to say 40. It was small. It was 30 or 40 women working in the fashion industry. And they were very high stress, very demanding jobs, deadlines, and, you know, all these pressures of modern day life that you would expect in the fashion industry. Something I'm not at all well versed on, but you know, this high pressure fashion industry. And they took them and measured sort of their vagal tone, our vagus nerve, that houses part of our parasympathetic nervous system, that rest, digest, your safe nervous system versus that sympathetic fight, flight, alert nervous system that was dominant with those women, right? Because that was the environment, like deadlines and go and do this and work. And they said, okay, we're giving you a break from work. Half of you sit here, relax, enjoy. And that's we know that's good medicine, right? And they took the other half and they did a myofascial release where you can have tightness in your fascia, and it's a massage sort of. If people have heard of like trigger points or
Right.
experienced a massage where the masseuse is like pressing on a certain knot or
It's quite painful.
adhesion. Yeah.
It's quite painful, everyone. It's a good pain, but
And
it's
they,
painful.
yeah, they did this myofascial release of the upper neck, and they saw that just that increased their coherence, increased their heart rate variability, increased their vagus tone, really sort of suggesting this, what we're talking about, communication network through the fascial system.
Yeah.
It's just mind blowing.
You know, your explanations, your in depth is so good. There have been so many questions. What does this mean for us? What's you know, so many great questions. I want everybody who's not already following Dr. Catherine Clint as well. I saw you too. You have some great courses. You got some great offerings and stuff. So just absolutely. And I guess we may need to come back and do more of this because we're starting to come where it's going to kick us off the Instagram live. But what you're saying, it just back to that coherence. How funny is it that at the beginning of your career, that fascia was just something they threw out? You know, like it's not really, you know, what we're learning. Just like the junk DNA, like there is nothing junk in our body. It is the most
Yes.
divine, sacred, organized thing
Yeah.
that could ever be absolutely unexplainable, absolutely the miracle. Uh,
Yeah.
have no idea how it's working. And yet, again, it's that courage that we have to explore to go, wait a minute, this is absolutely phenomenal. And then suddenly, fascia and junk DNA are actually 100% critical for everything that we're doing. So we're learning as humanity, which I love, 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 love that. And I'm so honored to have you here, have you on. And before we go, and again, everybody, please send your questions and follow this incredible woman. Is there anything in closing that you would like to say in terms of what you're doing and what we are experiencing as we move forward in our coherence and our vibration and our courage?
I think that the most, for me, the easiest way for me to get into that state of coherence and to stay there is gratitude.
Mm,
And we talked about
mm,
that shadow side. So being grateful not only for all the good things, but also a gratitude for my weaknesses, a
mm,
gratitude for my
mm.
mistakes, a
Yes.
gratitude for those things I want to shove under the rug, right? And a true gratitude, not just a platitude of like, oh yes, I'm grateful. A deep feeling
Yes.
and a
Hmm.
resonance of gratitude, and that gratitude, like you were talking about, acts as a mirror, so that if I can be grateful and accepting of my foibles and my
Yeah.
mistakes, I can hold that same gratitude and love for what I see might be someone else's mistakes, or
Yeah.
an opinion that I disagree with, or a political stance, or whatever it might be. If I can hold that love and duality in
Yeah.
myself, it's
Mm.
much easier to hold that for someone else. And that energy ripples. It ripples throughout me, it ripples throughout my family, my community, and it does with every single person that commits to a practice like that. And it doesn't have to be, people often ask me, what's your one non negotiable? And that's it. Before I go to sleep, before I get out of bed, even if it is 10 seconds where I just connect with that feeling of gratitude, and I kind of imagine these, concentric rings, sort of just grateful for it
Yes.
all.
Hmm.
It
Mm.
takes just a few seconds, and it brings
Yeah.
that state of coherence in me. And then my kids, my family are more coherent. The people
Yes.
that I talk with in my community and my day-to-day life, that coherence spreads and ripples.
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of a more powerful tool right now when we look and see things that we don't have that stop button in front of us to make things stop in the world around us or change, right? Some of these
Yes.
things are just beyond our control. I mean, we can take action, we can do things, but that stop button isn't on our desk. And so, one of the most powerful things I think we can do is to work on our own coherence and the coherence of the people in our daily lives.
Yes. Thank you so much. That is, I believe, what will heal the planet again, that we're all connected, that we got here from some incredible source and we're here together. That's the thing. We're here together
Mhm.
in gratitude and loving each other.
Thank
Thank
you.
I can't thank you enough for coming on. This is amazing. Perhaps we continue this.
Yeah.
Dr. Emoto emphasized the power of gratitude in his work in Hidden. Yes, he did. Yes, he
Mhm.
did. And we're right there. I'm just reading so many messages. So beautiful, everyone. Mm.
Mhm. Oh, thank you
Have
so
a,
much for having me on today. It was just an absolute good medicine talking with you. So thank you.
thank you for the medicine too. All right. We'll see you soon. Soon, soon, soon.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.